Hi, it's Kim from the Shamrock Quilt Studio. Today we're talking about trimming up our Miss Kelly applique block so we can start thinking about borders and how to add those borders on. So join us as we talk about this part of our project. And welcome back to the Shamrock Quilt Studio. Hi, we're back. I've got all the applique done on our project, and now it's time to decide on a finished size and do some trimming so we can add some borders. We're going to be adding the dark purple as our border fabric, but first we've got to trim it down so that we take the registration marks off and get it straight. I'm starting here by lining up a long ruler onto the design, and I think that the best place to start is in the stem at the middle of the design. That's going to be our starting point, and as I look at this I can tell that the bottom piece on the vase is just about perpendicular to that. It's a little bit off. I would say a 1/16 of an inch on one side. So we're going to start on that, and let me just make sure that I'm right on it. And then what we're going to do is we're going to mark where we want to trim. And it's not quite on the board and it's not quite off of the board, so that's making it a little difficult for me. So let me check that one more time. And I think that what I'm going to do, what do I have that's heavy? I only have one thing that's heavy, and it's a glass of water, so that's not going to work for me. This will work. Put that there, and we'll put, that might work, a little teapot there. And then we're going to start by using a square. This one is 10.5 inches. I think what we're going to need is something more, about 8 inches. Maybe this one. Whoops, I'm getting caught on my microphone. There we go. Oh yes. We're doing some little adjustments here to do this because we don't want to make a mistake. This is one of the places in the project that you want to make sure that you're doing what you need to do. So we've got this long ruler lined up on that vertical line of the stem, and it looks pretty straight up into that pink flower at the top, and we're close on the bottom on the vase. So we're going to put the square one next to that. And then we're going to do some marking. And these water-soluble markers, sometimes they work and sometimes they don't work. And that one's iffy. And I don't see a marked difference in the brand. I think it's just if you get one that works or you get one that doesn't work. Okay, there we go. That's much better. We're going to mark it all the way to the selvage. And then we're going to mark it about 4 inches. Oh heck, let's make it about 5 inches beyond the bottom of the vase. So now we've got a line which should be perpendicular to the stem. Now what we may find out is that the stem is not straight, but the mark we have on here now is not a permanent mark. We can erase that with some water. Okay, and we do know that this fabric is longer at the top than it is at the bottom. So that kind of can get the fold out of it. That's kind of what we expect. And it does want to gather up just a little bit of wave there. Now, we need to figure out what we're going to do for the top, because I'd like for it to be 1.5 inches, but 1.5 inches is going to put us so that that registration mark shows. I did find my old eraser brand, and I'm going to try it one more time. I think what's happening here is this pencil lead graphite that I used was super soft, and it just went down into the fibers, and it's just not coming out. So what do? That's a good question. Let's continue. We are about, on this side here, 1.25 inches from the tip of the leaf. And 1.25 inches, the top of the pink one, would put us so that the registration is not going to show. So let's do this. Let's put a line. We're going to try to create a perpendicular line at the top based on the line we drew. That's going to be our first step. And it is just slightly outside of the selvage. It's not where we're going to end up with it, but it's a place to start. And then we're going to take our square and we're back to that using this side line to give us a square corner. And if I put that square corner just below the registration mark on this side, that's where we're going to start our line. It may not be our final line, like I said before, but that's where we're going to start. Because all these lines come off with water. And we're starting farther out, and we're going to come in as much as we need. So now I have a longer ruler. And I'm going to continue that line as far as I can. In fact, I'm going to continue it all the way to the edge of the fabric. And what I'm finding here is the registration is on the other side of the line, on the inside of the design. That's what we're dealing with here. Lesson learned for next time, right? And as I covered in my previous video, this has been ironed very well so that when we started working on it, it was very flat. As we move it and we mark on it, it's going to get wrinkled again, but we understand that's going to happen. I'm going to line this one up on the center again. Use our little weights. Just doing this for just a rough check of where that line should be. And this one is much further. We should be about there. So I'm just going to put a dot or two. And then we're going to come in here and use our square again. And when we line that up, remember we were 1.25 inches from the far point of the leaf. I'm using that 1 inch, can't talk, 1.25 inches from this side as well. I guess that would be more like here. Okay, we're still, the one on the top is still out side of our borders, so we're gonna see what we get. We've got our corner started. Essentially what I'm doing here is I'm trying to draw a square around, or it may not even be a square, but trying to draw a line around the design that is square. And then we would be able to put our borders at that spot to create a frame around the design. And we want the design to be in the center as much as possible. And as a extra, maybe get those registration marks out of the design. So where we were, we had done 3 sides of this, and now we're going to come to the bottom. And if we have gotten our lines straight and our corners square, then what we should find when we put this ruler across the design, and the design is 24 inches, just a tad more than that. Just enough that the lines aren't right on the line. The stem is straight on the marking on the quilt, so we're good with that. And if we look at, for example, the bottom of the birds, one is a little bit higher than the other, but less than, I would say about 1/8 of an inch maybe. So I think we're good. And let's check the top of the vase. How does that sit? It's a little off. Yeah, it's a little off. Now, what would I rather have? The vase be a little crooked or the vine be a little crooked? And I think I'm going to go with the vase. If by chance yours was very far off, you could take it off and reposition it. You could also, in some designs, add an extra piece of applique that would allow it to distract from that a little bit. This one, this one I would say it's about 1/8 of an inch off, so I think we're just going to leave it By the time we put the quilting on, because the quilting is going to be a crosshatch on a diagonal, I think that that will draw your attention away from the perpendicular lines a bit. So I think we're just going to move forward with this. And we're going to take this piece on the bottom and we're going to mark it 2 inches from the bottom of the vase. And that for a couple of reasons. I think number one, it's going to give a little bit more volume to the picture. And the further the bottom of that vase is away from the bottom of the design, the less that you're going to notice that it's a little bit out of sync. Oh, out of plumb. Okay, we've got our square, and we're going to use our longer ruler to draw our line. I thought about setting up an overhead camera for this, but there's really nothing here technique-wise to learn from this. I think more than anything else, it's just talking about the process. Not so much that seeing it is really going to make it any better. Okay, so we're over to the corner, and we are out of square just ever so slightly. So I'm going to adjust that so it is square, and I'm going to come back about 6 inches and draw that line just a little bit more in place. So down here you've got 2 little lines, and we'll go with the furthest one. I'm going to mark that. Okay, so we've got it marked now. What I'm going to do is I am going to probably cut the bottom off because we've got plenty of fabric down here at the bottom. And then I'm going to measure the sides to determine how much or how long our border needs to be for all 4 pieces. And then I will come back and trim this probably about 3/4 of an inch on the outside of the line. And then look again at where we are. And I think what we're going to end up doing is trimming it at 1/2 inch so we can sew right at 1/2 inch and be on this line that we just drew. Now, because this is a water-soluble marker, this is something we're not going to be able to let sit and sit. It's going to have to be something that we do pretty quickly, or we're going to lose our marks and have to do it again. So that's what we're going to do, and just roughly, I can tell you that it is about 24 inches across, and probably about 25 inches in length. I was thinking it was a little bit longer than that, so it's just a little bit more than a square. If we wanted to make it a square, we could, but we're going to get those registration marks in, at least in one corner. There would be some ways that you could accommodate that. You could move the borders out to make it larger and then make an arc of the purple border fabric that you slid into those corners, so you kind of made little scoops, little cutouts into the square. There are a lot of things you could do. If you were so inclined, you could make the borders bigger, and you could put more applique around the borders, so that in the situation that I have, I've got little marks at the corners. But if you had a situation where you had marks everywhere or marks all up and down the sides, let's say you decided to mark out your fabric with your square up front with pencil, and it's not coming out now, you could still sew your border on where it needs to go and then add an applique border around to cover up those marks. It's very forgiving, and it is your creation, so if you need to do something different, do it, right? But I think that's how we're going to proceed. I'm going to need 24 inches by 24 inches. Excuse me, I'm going to need two 24-inch pieces, two 25-inch pieces, and then enough for the corners. And I think, like I said, I'm going to make these so that they are finished at 3 inches. So 24 plus 6 will make this 30 by 32. I think it would be 2 extra inches because it's an extra inch. 31, 32, probably 32. Will be the finished size of ours. And we're going to start now by cutting it, and we'll see you next time with some more information on borders and how to sew them on. Thanks. We'll see you next time at the Shamrock Quilt Studio.